I came home to silence. No laughter from the kids, no sizzling from the stove, no "hey babe" from the hallway. Just silence, the kind that makes you check the door twice because you feel like you've walked into a stranger's house. She was sitting at the dining table, dressed in a crisp navy blue suit, heels still on. Not tired, not messy, composed. Her lipstick was fresh, her perfume sharp, and beside her purse, a manila folder. I smiled out of habit. "Everything okay?" She didn't smile back. She just said with a calm so cold it burned, "I'm leaving. You keep the kids." I already spoke to the lawyer. I blinked, thought I misheard her. "You're what?" My voice cracked. That embarrassed me more than her words. She stood up and picked up her bag, not looking at me. "I've packed most of my things. I'll come back next weekend to collect the rest. The lawyer says we can file uncontested if you don't make this difficult." I wasn't even angry yet, just confused. "What about the kids?" I asked. She finally looked me in the eye, and I swear, she looked bored. "You're good with them. You've always been the dependable one. I just can't do this anymore." I stepped closer. "So you're saying I was just, what? A placeholder?" She didn't deny it, didn't flinch. She just shrugged and said, "You were always stable, but I never felt alive." That was it. No tears, no fight, just resignation. She walked past me toward the door, and just before she left, she turned and said, "You'll be fine. You always are." I stood there, staring at the manila folder. Divorce papers, already signed on her end. And in that moment, I realized she closed the door behind her like it was nothing. No slammed exit, no tears shed, just silence and a disappearing taillight. I stood in that same spot for, I don't know how long. Long enough for the sun to bleed out of the windows. Long enough for the kids to come downstairs, ask what was for dinner, and not even realize their mother had walked out. I didn't tell them. Not yet. I heated up leftovers, tucked them in, and sat on the edge of my bed, her pillow still indented. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I reviewed every moment of the past year, like a man reviewing security footage after a robbery, and the clues were all there. I just hadn't seen them. It started small. She began going to work events she never talked about afterward, started dressing up for errands, smiling at her phone, then putting it face down when I walked into the room. I remember the first real shift. It was a Tuesday. I came home early with takeout. Thought we could sit and eat as a family. She looked up at me like I was a disruption. "You didn't text," she said. I had plans. Plans she didn't cancel. She took her little purse and drove off, leaving me there with cold lo mein and two sleepy kids watching cartoons. I thought I was being paranoid. Marriage isn't always romantic. 18 years changes things. People get tired, but tired doesn't come with secrets. Tired doesn't come with passwords changed overnight. Then there was the perfume. A new scent. Sharp, floral, expensive. The kind she never wore for me. I asked once, joking, trying out something new. She smiled, but the kind of smile that tells you it's not meant for you. "No," she said. "Just felt like it." One Saturday, she left her laptop open in the kitchen. She always used private mode, always cleared her browser, but not that time. There was an email open, half written. I'm scared to tell him, but it's time. No name, no address, but I didn't need one. The subject line said everything subject after. I closed the lid, didn't confront her, didn't scream. Instead, I started watching, listening. She stopped arguing. That was the strangest part. Stopped caring if I was late. Stopped checking if I'd eaten. She didn't nag. She didn't praise. She just faded. I became background noise. The father of her kids. A wall, a wallet, a weight she didn't want to carry anymore. The last time we went out together was our anniversary. I took her to the same restaurant where I'd proposed. She was on her phone the whole time. When the dessert came, chocolate lava cake, her favorite, she didn't touch it. She just said, "I told my boss I might move departments. They've offered me something in Atlanta." I blinked. Atlanta? She sipped her wine and said, "It's not confirmed." But she already knew. She had already made the decision. I just hadn't been told yet. Like a manager planning layoffs but still asking you how your weekend was. She stopped sleeping in the same bed 3 weeks before she left. Said the kids had been restless. She needed sleep. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to. I began tracking small things. Her Uber history. Bank alerts for out-of-state purchases. Photos that disappeared from her Facebook. One day I got an alert for a hotel charge in Dallas. She had told me she was visiting her aunt. I knew her aunt lived in Houston. Still, I said nothing. Let her keep her narrative. Let her build her exit. Because I wasn't planning to stop her. I was planning to outlive it. The final confirmation came the night before she told me. She was humming. In the kitchen. Cooking chicken. Not for me, not for the kids, just for herself. That night she sat at the table alone, scrolling her phone and smiling. Not at anything on the screen. Just smiling. That was when I knew. Whatever world she lived in now, I was no longer in it. And the worst part, she looked free. But what she didn't know, what she never guessed, was that I'd already hired someone. Not a private investigator. Not a divorce attorney. A financial strategist. While she planned to run, I planned to stay. But not to chase. To position. She had her secrets. But I had my silence. And silence, my friend, is underrated. It doesn't just hide pain. It sharpens it. Until it becomes strategy. And strategy, that's what people forget about the quiet ones. We don't shout. We don't beg. We build, piece by piece, until the moment you walk out that door and realize you left the wrong one behind. The morning after she left, I sat on the edge of the couch with my coffee going cold. The kids were upstairs. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever. But not empty, just rearranged. It took me 2 full days to tell them. I didn't know what words to use. What version of the truth to offer without making them hate her, or worse, hate themselves. But kids aren't stupid. They know when something's off. So I called my son down first. 17. Smart kid. Talented. Sensitive in ways most boys hide. His eyes were already suspicious when he walked into the room. "She's gone," I said. "Gone where?" he asked. Already bracing. "She left. Said she's moving out. She's not coming back." He didn't react the way I expected. No tears, no rage, just this quiet clench of his jaw as he looked away. "Why?" he asked. Not with curiosity, with accusation. I took a breath, tried to tread gently. "She said she needed something different, that she wasn't happy, and that she didn't want to take you and your sister with her." He flinched at that. "You're lying." I stayed calm. "I wish I were." His voice rose. "She would never just leave us. Maybe you, but not us." There it was. That split. That unspoken wedge. He thought I deserved it. And maybe I did. In his eyes. Maybe I hadn't been the fun dad. The loud one. The playful one. I'd been the one paying the bills. Showing up. Folding laundry while they slept. But in the ledger of a teenager's heart, that kind of love is invisible. He kept pacing the room, shaking his head. "You must have done something. You had to. She's not like that. She always said you were cold. You never talked." I stared at my son, trying to remember the last time I'd sat beside him, looked him in the eye, and said, "I love you." I couldn't remember. And that was on me. But I also remembered the nights I sat by his bed when he had night terrors. The mornings I left early just to pack his lunch before school. The Christmas I sold my tools to buy him, that gaming system, things he may never recall, because they weren't loud. They were just there, like me. "She's not coming back," I said quietly. He turned to me, angry now. "Maybe you're the reason she left. Maybe she finally got tired of pretending." That one stung, not because it came from a stranger, but because it came from the boy I raised, the boy I loved more than life. I didn't raise my voice, didn't cry. I just said, "Maybe you're right. Maybe she was pretending, but not just with me." He stormed off, slammed the door, and I stood there, replaying his words like a slow echo in an empty cathedral. It hurt more than the betrayal, being disbelieved by the one I stayed alive for, because I had stayed. Every day, every choice, I had stayed for them. But when she left, she didn't just rewrite my story, she rewrote hers. And in her version, I was the problem. For weeks, my son barely spoke to me. He'd get up, go to school, eat dinner in silence, and retreat. And I let him. Because one day, he'd see. Maybe not today, maybe not next year. But one day, the truth would catch up. It always does. And when it did, I wanted to be the one still standing, still there, so he'd have a real version to come home to. His sister, my daughter, was only 12. She cried. But in that strange way children cry when they're more confused than sad, like they're afraid to ask too many questions. I tucked her in that night, and she looked up at me and whispered, "Did Mommy leave because of me?" I kissed her forehead. "No, baby. She didn't leave because of you. She left without you. There's a difference, and that difference would shape both of them. Shape how they'd love, how they'd trust, how they'd become. Which is why I stayed, even when it hurt, even when I felt invisible in my own home, even when my own son looked at me like a stranger in the ruins. I didn't stay for revenge. I stayed so that when they came looking for the truth, they'd find it standing in the doorway, worn, but still whole. Weeks passed. The hurt calcified. My son still wouldn't look me in the eye. My daughter clung to me in silence, like if she let go, she'd be the next one forgotten. And me? I moved through the house like a man on a minefield, careful, alert, never fully resting. That house was all we had left. Really, the walls still carried echoes of her laughter, her music, the click of her heels on tile floors. But I started noticing little things missing. A decorative vase, the silver chain she used to wear when she cooked, her wedding dress gone from the attic box. She wasn't just gone, she was stripping herself from the narrative, piece by piece. Then one afternoon, I got a call from a real estate agent. "I'm calling to confirm the photography appointment for your property on Thursday." I paused. I didn't schedule anything. He double-checked. "Says here your wife, a Miss Langford, booked us. Said the property would be vacant and ready to list." I hung up without finishing the call. My heart wasn't pounding. It was dead still. She was trying to sell the house, without telling me, without telling our kids. I sat down, breathing slowly, and then I did what I should have done weeks ago. I called my lawyer. He was quiet for a beat, after I explained it all. Then he said, "The house, is it in both your names?" I hesitated. "No, just hers. Years ago, her credit was stronger. We used her name to get the mortgage approved." He exhaled heavily. "That complicates things, but it doesn't end them." I felt the weight of that sentence. Didn't end them, just complicated them. He asked, "Who had been paying the mortgage?" "I have, every single month. Auto-deducted from my account for 18 years. Can you prove that?" I nodded. even though he couldn't see. I've got records back to 2007. He grew quiet again, then said, "That could work in your favor, especially if she's left you with sole custody of the kids. You've got residency, financial contribution, and dependence." But then he added something that changed everything. "There's one more thing. Check the deed. See if it says anything about survivorship or community property laws. Sometimes people sign things they don't read, and that can mean the difference between losing everything and owning it all." I pulled up the documents that evening, my hands trembling slightly, and there it was. A clause she must have overlooked, buried deep in the paperwork. In small print, "Upon marital dissolution, property equity shall be reviewed in accordance with proportional financial contribution." I read it 3 times, which meant, if I'd paid for 90% of that house, she wasn't entitled to 50. Not unless I rolled over and let her. She thought walking away gave her the upper hand. But she didn't realize, leaving doesn't void the receipts. That night, I didn't sleep. I ran every number, every transfer, every bill. Years of quiet servitude suddenly became weapons in a silent war I hadn't asked for. The next morning, I filed an injunction. She couldn't sell the house. Not now. Not without my consent. A few days later, her lawyer called mine. He sounded smug, said she was willing to offer me a payout, $40,000, to walk away and leave the property. "Tell her," I said to my lawyer, "that she can keep her money. I'll keep the roof she tried to disappear from." Because that's what it was now. A monument to every night I worked late, every overtime shift, every lunch I skipped so the kids could have shoes and she could have her dreams. She never saw that house as a home, only as an escape plan. But what she didn't count on was that I built it to last, and I wasn't done protecting it yet. Weeks later, I got a letter in the mail from her, handwritten, no return address. She said she didn't think I'd fight dirty, that she never meant to hurt me, that she thought I'd understand that maybe I was tired too. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer. Didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to say. You don't get to ask for understanding after trying to erase someone's life with a signature and a staged listing photo. I had been her backup plan. But now, she was the one losing her foundation, brick by brick. And I was still standing. On the same porch, she walked away from, holding the keys she forgot I'd earned. After the injunction was filed, and after her week's settlement offer was denied, I expected a storm. But what came next was worse than a storm. It was silence followed by whispers. It started with a phone call from her mother. She had barely spoken to me since our wedding day. She never liked me, said I was too quiet, too boring, said her daughter needed a man with ambition, not someone who folds laundry and builds birdhouses on Sundays. But now, she called, out of the blue. "You really won't let her sell the house?" she asked, skipping hello. "No," I said calmly. A pause. "She gave you her best years. She raised your kids. She could have had a life, you know. A bigger one." I almost laughed, but I didn't. "She had a life," I said. "She just didn't want it anymore." Then the real reason for the call revealed itself. "She's staying with us now," her mother continued. "It's not fair for her to have to start over from nothing. You're a man. You can rebuild. Let her go." I took a breath. Slow, steady. "She did go. I'm just making sure she doesn't take what was never hers to begin with." She scoffed. "So you're going to drag your children through a court fight? Over a house?" And there it was. The classic play. Make the man the villain for protecting himself. Make the quiet one seem cruel for finally drawing a line. I ended the call politely. Tell her she should have thought about that before she tried to disappear. But it didn't end there. One by one, People I hadn't heard from in years began to weigh in. Her cousin, her sister, even her old college friend from New Orleans. Messages like, "She's going through so much. Can't you be the bigger person?" She never said anything, but we always felt you weren't emotionally available. Be honest, didn't you see this coming? No one asked how I was holding up. No one asked how the kids were sleeping. No one offered to help with school runs or dinners or bills, just judgments, wrapped in pity, as if I had become the heartless one for refusing to be a doormat. I told my brother what was happening. He said, "Just give her what she wants, man. Move on. Start over." Even he didn't get it. It wasn't about money or revenge. It was about the principle. You don't get to shatter something and still claim ownership over the pieces. I realized then, some people only show up when you're bleeding, and not to help, but to remind you it's your fault for not wearing armor. One night, my daughter asked why Grandma doesn't visit anymore. I said, "Sometimes people choose sides, even when they weren't invited to the war." She nodded, not fully understanding, but sensing the truth in my voice. That night, I stood at the front window, watched the porch light flicker in the wind, and I understood something I hadn't before. You can love someone, raise their kids, build their home, and still be nothing but a temporary convenience in their mother's eyes. That realization didn't break me. It just sobered me, because the real betrayal isn't always the one who leaves. It's the ones who stay quiet when you're being pulled apart, and call it neutrality. But I didn't scream. I didn't post online. I didn't beg for understanding. I did what quiet men do. I made a list of every person who showed their truth during the fire, and I kept it, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Because if this ever happened again, I'd know exactly who to stop answering the door for. After that, she stopped calling. No texts, no messages through the kids, no lawyer letters, just silence. But it wasn't the kind that brings peace. It was the kind that tightens around you like a noose you didn't notice at first. It was strategic, because silence, when used right, isn't absence. It's pressure. She wanted me to fold, to grow tired, to come crawling with a settlement just to make it go away. But I didn't. I watched. I waited. And I studied every move she didn't make. She stopped paying her half of anything: school fees, groceries, even the shared phone bill we'd left running. Then, a notification from our kids' school: "Your child's lunch account is overdue." She'd stopped contributing months ago, but she'd found time to post wine glass selfies on Instagram with hashtags like #healing, #newbeginnings, #no-regrets. Funny. The ones who burn everything down always seem to be the first to find peace in the ashes, because they never had to sweep them up. One afternoon, my son came home with a printed envelope. He handed it to me without a word and walked off. Inside, an offer. From her. Not a court document. Not a formal letter. Just a handwritten note, wrapped around a check. "Let's end this with grace. $25,000. You keep the house, and we move forward in peace." I read it twice. She had reduced 18 years of my life, of our family, our memories, our sacrifices, to a dollar amount that wouldn't even cover 2 semesters of college. And the word that stuck with me wasn't grace. It was forward. She wanted to move forward by pretending none of this ever happened, by making me the villain for refusing to forget. But I didn't rip the letter. I filed it, with the others. Because this wasn't war in the way people imagine. No screaming matches in parking lots. No shattered windows or screaming voicemails. This was war by silence. By positioning. By narrative. By pressure. She wasn't after money. She wasn't even after the house. She was after the story. She wanted to be the one who tried to make peace. the one who offered grace, the one who moved on while I clung to bitterness. It wasn't about the property, it was about the public perception. And when I didn't answer her letter, when I didn't cash the check, she posted online a cryptic message. Some people would rather stay in the past than forgive. No names. But everyone knew, and slowly, I became the bitter ex-husband in her circle. The man who held her back, who wouldn't let her be free. She weaponized sympathy, wrapped it in hashtags, and waited for me to bite. I didn't, because silence, as she was learning, goes both ways. And while she was posting poems about rebirth, I was preparing timelines, collecting receipts, pulling phone records, not for revenge, for truth, because the difference between us was this. She wanted to be seen as right, I just wanted to be right. Then one day my daughter brought me a flyer. "Daddy, is Mommy getting married again?" I froze. "What makes you say that?" She pointed to the flyer, an invite to a celebration of new beginnings. It had no last names, no address, just initials, a sunset background. But I knew, and I knew who the man was too. The same one she used to text at 2 a.m. while telling me it was just work. She hadn't even finalized the divorce, but she was already rewriting her life. So I called my lawyer, not to start a fight, but to finish the one she thought I'd forgotten. That flyer sat on my desk for 2 days. I didn't touch it, didn't even look at it, after that first glance, because I already knew what it meant. She wasn't just moving on. She was rewriting the ending, staging a soft-focus fairy tale, while I was still here, brushing tangled hair, ironing school uniforms, attending PTA meetings alone. But I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was past that. Anger is loud, temporary. What I felt now was colder, sharper, purpose. So I called my lawyer and said 2 words, "It's time." He knew exactly what I meant. Within days, we filed for full legal and physical custody, with documented abandonment, with financial records, with witness statements from teachers and neighbors who'd noticed the change in routine. She hadn't visited the kids in almost 4 months. She hadn't called in 6 weeks. She hadn't contributed a dime in nearly a year. But she was throwing new beginning parties and planning some rebranding romance tour. So while she celebrated, I recalibrated. I refinanced the house into my name, quietly, legally, with every payment record and proof of occupancy stacked like bricks behind me. Then I did something she never expected. I rented out the house. Not permanently, just enough to shake the ground beneath her narrative. I found a tenant, a single mom with a newborn struggling to find shelter, moved the kids and me into a smaller home on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but warm, quiet, stable. The rent from our old house covered most of our bills. And for the first time in years, I slept. No ghosts in the hall, no phantom perfume lingering in the air, no one looking at me like I was a mistake. And then came the part she really didn't see coming. I met her new man, not by accident. I asked around, quietly, found where he worked. And one rainy afternoon, I walked in, sat down across from him at the outdoor cafe where he took lunch. He recognized me immediately, tried to smile. I didn't. I didn't threaten him, didn't raise my voice. I just said, "Do you know who she was when I met her?" He frowned. "Look, I don't think she was tired, broke, running from debt collectors. I took her in, helped her rebuild, loved her through every storm." He shifted uncomfortably. I leaned in. "She told me the same things she's probably told you, that I was cold, unavailable, controlling." He didn't respond. I smiled then, not with malice, but with something deeper, sadder. "And when she's done needing you, When she finds a shinier escape hatch, she'll say the same things about you. He tried to speak, but I held up a hand. I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to warn you. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a folded sheet, not threats. Just her exact words, emails, text snippets, timelines. The day she met him, the day she lied about where she was, the money she withdrew from our joint account to fund their getaways. He stared at it, then at me, and I asked him one last question. Are you ready to be the man washing her mother's socks and fixing her father's roof in 10 years? He didn't answer. I left the page on the table, walked away, because I wasn't there to ruin his life, just to make sure he knew exactly what kind of dream he was inheriting. Back home, the divorce paperwork had returned, but this time, it was on my terms. Full custody granted, house awarded, alimony denied on grounds of abandonment and extramarital conduct. She had no fight left, not because she lost, but because she never expected me to play the long game. She thought silence meant weakness, that stability meant submission, that quiet men don't strike back. But what she didn't realize is, we don't raise our voices. We raise the ground you thought was steady. And when it gives way, you don't hear an explosion, you just hear the door closing. One final time, she came back one Sunday afternoon, unannounced. No call, no warning, just a knock at the door like she still had the right to be familiar. I opened it. She stood there in a cream blazer and oversized sunglasses, not the kind of woman who left, but the kind who pretended she'd never done it in the first place. Can we talk? She asked. I stepped aside, wordless. She walked in like she owned the place, eyes darting across the living room like it was a museum of the life she gave up. She touched the edge of the couch, paused at the dining table, then looked at me. I didn't expect you to go this far. I didn't respond, because silence does more damage than screaming ever could. She sat, smoothed her blazer like this was a business meeting. I never meant for things to turn bitter. I tilted my head. You left, tried to sell the house, ignored the kids. How exactly was it supposed to turn? She flinched, but only slightly. I wasn't myself. I felt trapped. You have to understand. You don't get to play lost now. You had a plan. You executed it. I respected it. I let you go. I opened the drawer beside me and pulled out a folder. Thick. Receipts. Timeline charts. Lawyer memos. Email printouts. Bank withdrawals. School records. I laid them in front of her. These are the things you tried to erase. Her lips parted like she wanted to protest, but the evidence stared back too loud to ignore. She swallowed. You kept all of this? I nodded. I stayed quiet while you painted me as the reason. While you hosted parties and posted poetry about freedom. Her voice cracked. It wasn't about you. It was about me trying to breathe, and yet you held your breath through 18 years, then exhaled in another man's bed. Silence. I leaned forward, not angry, not unkind. You thought I wouldn't fight back because I didn't scream, but I don't use noise. I use facts. She blinked fast, bit her lip. I didn't want to be the villain, she whispered. You weren't, I said. You were the author of your own story, but you don't get to write mine. She looked down. For once, no comeback. Then she reached across the table, slow, trembling, and placed her hand on mine. I made a mistake. I didn't pull away, but I didn't return the gesture either. No, you made a choice. Over and over again. She pulled her hand back. I rose to my feet. The divorce is done. The court has ruled. The kids are stable. You can visit if you show consistency. But this house, this life, it's no longer yours to drop into when you remember it once felt like home. She stood too, eyes glassy now. I didn't expect you to change. I gave a half smile. I didn't change. I just stopped letting you use my silence as your safe space. She reached for the doorknob. I spoke once more just before she walked out. Next time you tell the story, don't forget to mention the man who didn't fight you, but outgrew you. She paused, then walked into the sunlight without a word. And I closed the door, not with rage, not with regret, but with relief, because the final conversation wasn't for closure, it was for confirmation. She never truly saw me, but I finally saw myself. After that final conversation, I didn't look back, not because I didn't care anymore, but because I finally understood something I'd missed for years. Peace isn't something you beg for. It's something you build once the noise is gone. The divorce finalized 3 weeks later. My lawyer called with the last document. He said, "It's done. You walked out with everything that mattered." I nodded slowly. Even though he couldn't see me, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt free. She didn't fight the custody ruling, didn't show up to the last mediation, didn't appeal the financial split. She let it go. Maybe because she thought she could rewrite her life somewhere else. Or maybe because she realized she'd already lost the one thing she could never fake: stability. And me, I didn't throw a party. I didn't post anything online. I took the kids to the lake that weekend. We grilled hot dogs and watched the sun melt into the water. My son, who'd barely spoken to me for months, asked if he could drive the boat. I said yes. He smiled. And in that moment, watching him steer, laughing with his sister, I realized I hadn't lost a family. Piece by piece, quietly, while everyone else was watching the wreckage, I was rebuilding the foundation. No spotlights, no applause, just a man with his hands in the dirt, planting again where someone else had burned the garden. I took a job at a local carpentry school, taught night classes, started building furniture again on weekends. Nothing big, just clean, honest work. And slowly, I felt something I hadn't in years. Whole. No more waiting for a door to open. No more pretending not to notice the cold shoulder in my own bed. No more walking on eggshells to keep someone from leaving, when the truth is, they were already gone. I reconnected with my brother. We started fishing again, just like we did when we were boys. And I began journaling, not for anyone else, just for me, because writing it down reminded me I wasn't invisible. I was still here, still breathing, still worth something. I heard from someone she moved again, out of state. The man she was with didn't last. They split, quietly. No headlines, no fanfare. And that's the thing about people who run from truth. Eventually, it catches them. And when it does, no one claps. They just turn the page. I didn't rejoice in her unraveling. That's not who I am. I didn't need her to fall to feel like I rose, because I didn't rise from her ruins. I rose from my own, and that's the kind of victory no one can steal. Not with charm, not with lies, not with courtroom theatrics or poetic captions, just truth, carried in silence, delivered with dignity. It happened on a Thursday evening, just after dinner. The kids were doing homework, and I was fixing a crooked cabinet door in the kitchen. My son leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, head lowered slightly. He was taller now. His voice had deepened. But that night, he looked 12 again. Like the boy who used to hold my hand in the parking lot, without hesitation. "Can we talk?" he asked. I wiped my hands on a towel, nodded. He sat down at the kitchen table, fiddled with the edge of a coaster. "I saw Mom last weekend," he said quietly. She's not doing so good." I didn't say anything. He looked up at me. "She asked about you. Said she didn't think you'd keep the house, or the kids, or your head." I let out the faintest laugh through my nose. "She always did underestimate quiet men." He smiled. A little. But then his face turned serious again. She said some things about the past. How she felt unseen, lonely, like she had to carry the family by herself. I raised an eyebrow. Is that what she told you? He nodded. I thought for a moment before replying. She did carry a lot, and she did feel unseen. I don't deny that. But not because I left her to do it alone. It's because she stopped looking back to see who was beside her. He nodded slowly. I see that now. He swallowed hard. His voice dipped low. I'm sorry, Dad, for the things I said, for not believing you. I don't know. I thought moms don't walk away. That maybe it had to be you. I looked at him, really looked at him. And in that moment, he wasn't a boy torn between two parents. He was a young man, carrying the weight of clarity. I walked around the table and placed a hand on his shoulder. You don't owe me an apology. You were a kid trying to make sense of something senseless. You saw love walk out the door, and you needed someone to blame. He looked up at me, his eyes wet. You never yelled at me, never snapped. Even when I was cruel, I smiled softly, because I knew you were hurting. And I also knew something else. What? That one day when the fog lifted, you'd see who was still standing, and who never left. He nodded. We sat in silence for a long while. Then he asked me something I didn't expect. If I ever go through something like this, if a woman I love ever does to me what Mom did to you, what should I do? I paused, thought about it carefully. And then I said, don't beg, don't chase, don't try to fix someone who decided to break you. Instead, be still. Watch. Think. Then strike once, quietly, cleanly, and with dignity. He blinked. Like you did? I met his eyes. No, son. Better. Because you'll have the one thing I didn't. A father who showed you what strength looks like when it's silent. He stood, walked over, and hugged me. Tight. The kind of hug I'd been waiting on for years without knowing I needed it. I'm proud of you, he whispered. That night, I didn't journal. I didn't clean the kitchen or check the locks 3 times like I used to when she left. I sat in the backyard, drink in hand, watching the porch light flicker gently in the breeze. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Not the peace that comes when the pain ends, but the peace that comes when you survive it. Because this wasn't a story about loss. Not really. It was a story about a man who was mistaken for soft until the world remembered how steel feels when it's quiet. If this story hit you in the chest the way it did me, share it. Comment below what would you have done. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life betrayals, revenge, and quiet justice told from a man's point of view.